Cool. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this session, to this meetup. I am Al, and today I want to explore how you can actually evaluate agents and how we can validate that actually is working, if our skills, if our MCP tools are actually correctly called, and as well, not only MCP and skills, I'm talking about all the components that you have to measure when you are creating an agent. That is why if you are working with agents, if you are creating your own agent in your company, this 25 minutes is going to be super valuable for you. Just one small thing, please use the QA to make questions. I just read one question about if .NET it's enough to be like an AI engineering. And this is my personal perspective, and I'm just going to answer really quick. I feel like the short answer is if you know the basic, not the basic because .NET is not that basic, but if you know the idea of programming stuff, tool calls, how to handle code, all of these kind of things can be replicated to be able to use that and AI to deliver a task. But if your goal is create model, train models, find new architectures, find new performance, all of this is more for the ML engineering side. And I think that's another part of the story. That's why if you want to use tools, if you want to use AI, if you want to work with agents, you can know only .NET, and it's fine because you are going to be able to iterate in other kind of programming languages. And this is just like to answer that question. Okay, perfect. The big topic here, it's about agents, and this is a personal topic for me because I have been working in this for the last months, creating skills, MCP, creating tools, and sometimes you create the agents and you feel that everything is done, but then you put that in production, or not production, but at least multiple people using it, and you realize that there are multiple things that you have to control. And I am talking about tool failures, invalid actions like hallucinations, or retries. The agent is trying to do task like a tool call, and it tried multiple times, changing just one variable, but it tried like 4 times. That 4 calls, it's money that you are losing. As well, like latency. There are more things that you have to check when you are creating the agents. And I'm gonna explore all of these things from the evaluation perspective and observability, and how you can integrate this to your model. I didn't present myself. I am Ado. I'm an ML engineering working in the DevRel team. I would love to connect with you. If you want, just connect with me on LinkedIn. We can keep talking about agents. We can keep talking about computer vision and discuss ideas and more. Okay, 3 main goals today. The first one is, let's try to understand the difference between the traditional software evaluation and now these new evaluations with agents. Second, we are going to talk about like the most important blocks when you are creating an evaluation. That is scenario, rubrics, traces, all of these kind of words that you have to know, and as well concepts that you have to use. And finally, we are going to do like some practical stuff. I'm going to show you an agent and an evaluation directly in FiftyOne, and how this actually looks in a real application. Cool. Let's start with traditional evaluation versus agent evaluations. And if your background is in as an engineering, you already know that you usually have to create like unit tests. Like you create a new model, you create the unit test, you create and validate some of the input, and you get an output, and then you say, okay, this is working fine. You try to create multiple edge cases, and it's like you are expecting to put an input and get an output, and that is super controllable. And that's how it usually works before. You can integrate like mock dependencies, like what is like what like this dependency how it should works. And as well, you can add assertions like this is the expected output, it has to be equal. If it's not equal, trigger this issue. It's very controllable, this environment, and I think it's good. However, when you start to work with agents, all of these things change because there are no deterministics, and you can run the same prompt multiple times and you are not going to get the same results. And I am just talking about like sending a prompt, getting an output, that's all. But if you start to contribute to add as well MCP calls, skills, guardrails, all of these other elements that an agentic system can have, it becomes harder to be able to measure, and it's become harder to just use a unit test to be able to see if your agent is working. Because we are not talking about evaluated if it's working or not. We are trying to get scores, and we are trying to get more information about what is happening in our evaluation system. That's why we have to stop thinking in the traditional software evaluation and start to move more like how can I evaluate a system that is not giving me the same response each time, and how can I evaluate if the task that we are trying to do is actually solved. Cool. And traditional testing is not enough. Now, this is a phrase from John Donne that say no man is an island. And what that means is like if you put a person in like a room and you start to ask questions, the behavior of this person is gonna be one thing. But if you put this same person in an environment like with more people in a society, they're gonna respond different. And this kind of difference between how a human responds when they are with more people, it's very similar to the agent. You can ask the agent an individual LLM, I don't know, Opus for any model, and then you are gonna get input, output. You can run benchmarks, get all the metrics. But when you put this LLM directly in an agentic system that has calls, skills, and all of these variables, the performance is different. Like you have to evaluate the agent, not only in the component level, but as well the end-to-end evaluations. Okay, that was like a quick intro about this. Let's move to the idea of, okay, if we don't have a specific response, that's gonna be more like a CI for probabilistic system. Like how can I keep improving the model in a system that is not giving me like a true false, it's giving me more like multiple variables that I have to take in account to validate if it's working correctly. And before going and show you the example and how this works in reality, there are multiple elements that we have to take in account. And I split it in three. Maybe your system has more, or maybe it has less. Maybe you are not using skills. Maybe you are not using MCP. Maybe you are not using guardrails. Like it depends what you are building. But I just split it in three. The first one is about execution and actions. And here we have things like functions. And function is like the traditional software, just in like I have to parse data time. You just have to, you have the input, you have the output, you know what is expected output, and you can use traditional unit tests to validate that. That is like the same way that we do it. We can have as well MCP calls in this execution and actions as a component. We can have an MCP and we can have a unit test in the MCP because we already know what is the input, what is the output, and we can just run test it. And then we can have external system too, same idea. Here you can have unit tests. And I just want to make a stop here because think like you don't have to remove the unit test. You have to still validate. You need to still validate your code with traditional weights, but we are going to add more evaluations to be able to improve the performance of the agents in a production environment using like more dynamically evaluation tools. Okay, we have the first layer, executions. Remember that you can ask any question. I'm gonna answer the question at the end. Depends of the time, but external system, just think like you are gonna call an API that is outside your control, but you can as well use that as a component and evaluate what is the performance of external systems too. Then we have intelligence. This is the second layer. Here we have LLMs. It could be a router. You don't have to use directly an LLM. You can use, I don't know, light LLM to be able to have multiple providers. And then you have to add as well an evaluation to that component that is the router. You have skills, very powerful ones, very simple concepts, just mark down with instruction that the agent has to follow step by step, but very powerful to improve the performance of your model in a real case. Then you have memory, context, Josh. All of these components are part of this big picture of how can I evaluate an agent end to end. We have as well in safety that it's very important, and more if you are working with data of like companies. You don't want that the agent can perform something that is not correct. You create guardrails, but you have to evaluate these guardrails and actually validate it that they are working correctly. This is part of the evaluation, and it should be part of the pipeline that we are going to create. You can add more like permissions, policies. The global picture that I want that you take here is like there are multiple small components that create an evaluation, a system, and in this case, an agentic system. And you have to go each of the components and be able to evaluate it, but as well evaluate this a system level where you have the full pipeline, and end to end you can validate that it's working correctly. Perfect. Let's move to the next one. The next one, it's more about the core primitive of the agent evaluations. On the right, you are gonna see the agents. It's just a video. I'm gonna show you in real time a demo. But here you have multiple things that I wanna show. First concept, very important, run. And just think like you send a message, you get a response. We just did that. We say like, I would like to filter a sample in my data set. I have 51 open here, and the agent go read the concept, read this, and then respond with something. This is what we call like the run. Then we have the traces, and just think like the traces is not only like I send something, I receive something, but it's the different number of things that the agent has to do. And if you see here on the right, I say like, okay, yes, let's filter 3 examples randomly. The agent has to call one tool, has to go to MCP, call this set view. It sends some parameters. Then based on that parameters, it receives an output. It checked the output. And in this example, it's funny because the agent failed. It made the wrong query, the word request. And actually the response is success false. That means that it was not able to set the view. Then based on this, it make another call, and it continually create like a trace of what is happening. This is extremely important that we add directly in our evaluations, because you can perform the same task with 2 calls, or you can perform the same task with 15 calls. And the difference here, it's money that you are losing and your client are losing if you are not evaluating this. Then we have the threads. This is more like concept general before going to the real case of use, but just think like each of the time you have this, like, I call it like a ping pong conversation, like a loop conversation, like, yeah, like this kind of term where you send a message, you receive one, all of these iterations, you can call it in a thread. And this is part of what we are having here. If the conversation continues, you're gonna see that, okay, they apply the filter. Now it continue with another task, in this case, apply a model, and then start to do all of these things. We have a scoring, variant, agent persona, and Josh. I am not gonna go one by one. This is gonna be more for the workshops. But all of these variables are part of what you have to evaluate in a system, and what you should validate directly in the evaluation. And just to let you know, here at the end of the presentation, I'm gonna share these slides. You're gonna have like a small definition of each of the one that I am talking right now, just to give you like the specific idea of each of these variables here. Okay, let's continue with the next one, that is the evaluation metrics. And I just split it in 3. And the most important message here is like, you don't need to measure everything. Like, you don't have to read all the variables. You don't have to, like, there are many, like there are hundreds of variables that you can measure. And actually the goal here is understand your business, understand what exactly your user is trying to do, and based on that, start to integrate metrics from day one. Like, I am not saying that you have to wait and do it later, but you have to define what are the most important metrics for your case of use, integrate it from day one, and then start to get, if it's needed, more metrics to improve the performance. And just to give you an example, we can start without a cost, that is the number 2 ledger, without a cost ledger, because for me, maybe it's not that relevant how much costs me to call the LLM and how many tokens I am using. Maybe for me, I don't know, that's depend of you. It's not important in the first iteration, but then when I want to optimize and when I want to improve the money that I am spending, reduce the money that I am spending, in that time, this kind of metric become relevant for me, right? It depends of your case of use, but you can define which one do you want to integrate. Here I have correctness, and it's like the agent was able to do the task that I asked them to do it, yes or not. Then we have quality, like actually it did the task with a specific expected quality. Or for example, if I am trying to book, or if I try to buy a t-shirt in Amazon, the agent was able to go to Amazon, actually pick the t-shirt that I asked, like do all of this process, or maybe ask me 5 questions asking me the same, like the quality is not good. Like you can measure all of these things that are not quantifiable, and it's part of what we would like to evaluate. And then we have efficiency. Okay, there are some questions I'm gonna answer at the end. Super nice question. I love that one. Yeah, there are efficiencies, there are costs that you can integrate as well in the evaluation part, in the metrics. Cool. Now, the real magic start here, because in the next 12 minutes that I have, we are going to connect all of these points. Like we have what we call the components with all these elements. Then we have kind of like the primitive of what is important to take in account, what is a run, what is a trace, what is a thread, like how many times do I have to validate the same prompt to be able to have like a more probabilistic result of the evaluations. And then we have the evaluation that is, okay, what metrics I am just going to integrate. And the idea that we have is you can integrate all of these things in a scenario. And thinking in a scenario like a user story, like Ado is going to 51 app because he wants to filter his data set, and then he wants to apply some computer vision model like object detection to find some objects, and then he's going to use that to find defects in the data set. This is like the user story. And you can create a scenario with that idea and integrate the components validation, the metrics that you define, and of course all of these primitive in one file. And this is what we create, and I'm going to show you just right now. Okay, let's talk about more detail. What is a scenario and what you can do with this scenario idea. And here I am not talking about tools. I know that there are tools like Upskill from Hugging Face, Landsmith, LangFuse. There are multiple tools to do evaluations. Here, what I'm trying to integrate is like the big picture of evaluation. All of them use that idea, but put it in a different way. And you should use that tools to save time. But there are one component that is really relevant. That is you have to create your custom rubrics to be able to evaluate your agent in your app. Like you cannot use generic evaluations if you want to evaluate a specific tool that you have in your app, because the evaluation, the general one, doesn't know how your app performance. You have to integrate that layer, and this is what we did. Okay, okay, we are good in time. Let's create a user story. We say that scenarios, it's based on user stories. Let's create a user story. The goal, we would like to get metrics about a data set. We just started working a new project. We have a data set with millions of images. It's just in our repo. We decided to integrate it to 51. We import this data set using skills. You can do that. And then I would like to get some metrics about that. And then when I get the metrics, I would like to filter a class. I just put cats, but you can use any filter class if there is classes. And then I would like to apply a model, in this case, YOLO version AN, to this filter data set to be able to get more predictions, maybe leveling, any of these kind of tasks. And before, of course, going to show you the platform, what is 51? If you are new here, and this is the first time that you are in this kind of meetups, and this is the first time that you hear about 51, it's the only open source data-centric AI solution where you can do like literally from import data set, like import up empty, a clean data set, leveling all of this annotation process, bounding boxes, mask, all of these kind of things, evaluate your annotation in the same platform and go back and fix your annotation. Like you can do all of this loop directly there. And as well, you can run inference of models and as well go again and improve your data set, your annotation, your edge cases. It's like a data-centric AI approach where you put all of this data as the most important point, and then you start to do multiple improvement in your model. And everything now, of course, it's around the physical AI idea where we have classification, detection, point clouds, images, audio, all of this in just one place. Okay, let me go. I'm gonna do a live demo. I am not super fan of live demos, but it's the beauty of that. Let me just open. This is the platform, the 51 enterprise platform. In this case, you have a data set here. This is an example data set just to show you here. With multiple classes, I can just remove all of these labels to make it simple to see. Multiple classes. There is some ground truths here of elements. This is call. This is other elements. Then we have our agent. I'm just gonna open it here. And this is directly connected to the app. That means that all the things that the agent can do, it's gonna act directly in our app. I'm just gonna use the user story here. Just gonna ask, okay, get the general metrics about this data set, then filter the data set, show me only cats, and then apply a model. We can start to see how the model is calling MCP, it's calling some tools here to get information about this data set. It's getting some views. It's filtering. It's getting information about the schema. We can see that it's able to filter everything, in this case, only cats. But if you have a data set with millions of images and you have a specific class that you want to filter or get some general information, you can do it here. And then it asks me if I want to apply a model. This is just like a specific use of case. Just gonna say yes. I just gonna validate which model. We can have YOLO or any model, and I can just schedule. This is just the agent. This is not the main topic of this. It's just the agent working. Then it's gonna apply the model and it's gonna update everything. That is fine. But the real, interesting here, it found the current view. It was not selected. It showed me again. Okay, now current view is selected. Now, okay, let's schedule it. Now, the interesting thing here, we just send the job. Now it's a schedule. The interesting thing here is, okay, how we evaluate this? Because I just run one simulation where I create one example. I am just using one goal, but this exactly same prompt, hundreds of people can use it in a different way. They can say something like, okay, I would like to apply a model, maybe YOLO. That's the only prompt. Now the agent has to start to ask questions and figure out what is the thing that the user wants to do, and then based on that need to be able to filter the cats, apply the model. Like the output is gonna be the same, but the way that you ask the agent to do it is completely different. And to do that, we are gonna use the idea of the scenarios. Now, what is the scenario and what contains a scenario and how we can connect what I showed you before with our evaluation system. This is an example of a scenario. This is an example of a scenario. We can see here first, like the metadata. This is just for us to have a control of what we are evaluating. That is what identity, what user story, which data set. You can have hundreds of data sets and you would like to create evaluations of how is the agent performing in multiple data sets. You can do that. You can define which component you want to test. And this is what I mean, like here we are doing an S scenario. You are running the agent as it's in production, but you are going from the scenario, big picture, to the small components. Okay, I would like to see if my agent is able to call this MCP. I would like to see if my able is able to call the skills. Like I can measure if it's able to trigger the skill, if it's able to change the filter, for example, show me only 14 cats, all of this kind of metadata. Then I can apply multiple models. Of course, if you are running an evaluation, you know that it's different to run Cloud Sonnet 4.6 versus a new model, a different company, one from OpenAI or any other companies. It's completely different, and the results are going to be different. You are able to as well, and you should integrate in your evaluation the ability to change the models. Then in this scenario example, where we are trying to put like the big picture of the user stories, we have something that is the persona goal, the persona. What is the persona? Because here we have, because here we have multiples, as you can see here, we have multiples like iterations. It's not just one message and the response. We are doing this with a multi-turn message. Like I send one, then they ask me more things. Because we would like to automate this and be able to put that in the pipeline, we need to create what we call the agent persona, and it's an agent that simulates the persona, and this agent has to have some information. For example, what is the goal that the user wants to do? What is the role of this user? which previous knowledge the user has, behavior, what is the completion criteria, and single term. The magic thing here is like you can change that and you can say, okay, now I would like to simulate maybe not a data scientist exploring a computer vision data set. Maybe I would like to simulate a person that doesn't know anything about AI and want to test this evaluation. And I can change the persona to be able to run this new scenario and start to get metrics about what is happening there. This is same with behavior or completion criteria. Like I can define what is successfully in a no like, let's say non a number way, more like a behavior completion. Like if, because I can say, okay, this task is completed if you filter 14 samples. That is simple. You just check the data set. If it's the filter is 14 samples, you did it. But sometimes it's not about just filtering. It's more about be able to achieve a specific experience in the user. You can add that directly in the completion criteria as well. Now let's go to the scenario example. In these last 3 minutes, we have the prompt variants, and this is important. We can have the same prompt in 20 or million different ways. Like I said before, you can have like a direct question that where I say I would like to run these metrics, evaluate my data set X, Y, and Z. You can say it in different words, like we call paraphrase. You can create some edge cases and negative cases, and you can create whatever you prefer. Like you can say, you can create a case where in the same evaluation you ask, okay, filter the cats and then remove it. It's a specific case, and you can validate if your agent was able to actually get the description of the data set, filter the data set, and then remove it. And when you try to remove it, you are going to evaluate your guardrails. You want that anyone can remove the stuff? Maybe no. And if it's not, you can validate that the agent is able to say, no, don't remove that, and let's continue with the task. This is part of what you should evaluate in these systems. Then we have the rubrics. I'm going to go in the rubrics in 1 second. And then the scoring of the metrics. You define budgets. You define if you want to use an LLM as a judge as well to get some more like not like a variable, but more like a general idea of the judgment of like if it's doing a good job or not, but based off an LLM. And then we have the rubrics. In the rubrics, it's just defined like all of these kind of tool that you want to evaluate. For me, the rubrics is the most powerful thing because it depends of you. If you have a, I don't know, a platform that help with sales and you have this agent, you have the tools, the internal tools to validate that the agent is actually doing the task. You can create this sandbox and be able to validate it and get metrics directly in your system. This is outside any evaluation. This is more about how you use your system and your custom functions to be able to give feedback to the user and give feedback to the people that are creating the agents. Perfect. Let me finish with this eval in action, and then if I have time, I can answer some of the questions, or I can answer later. But this is the scenario running. We can see that it's calling directly the agent. Here, there is not a person validating. It's just running the scenario that I showed you before with a specific variant that is direct. And we can start to see that the agent is trying to perform the task. It's calling, in this case, Cloud Sonnet 4.6 in Anthropic. We have an auto-confirming that is very nice because it's able to, like when the user say, okay, I'm going to run this model, are you okay with that? You have to say, so someone's had to say yes. You can automate that as well. And here we have an issue. And this is part of what we are expecting. Like the evaluation is going to show me issues. In this case, was a variable that the model hallucinate. I can fix that. And I can continuously generate a new version where the agent actually is able to send the request, as you can see here, and get the correct parameters. But only you can find these issues if you run this multiple times. And if you start to get not like a true a fail or pass results, instead of that, you get like a scoring of how many times when you run the evaluation, you actually get good results. And I just want to finish with this, because at the end, you're going to have an scenario with all of these variables and components that we mentioned before, with a validation per component. Was able to call the tools, it was able to call the skills, it was able to filter the skills, the data set, and that is gonna give you like a failure file, or could be a successful file, depending on if it's good or not. But then you have to use that to get and improve the model. That was the thing that we did before, and then run it again and start this loop between how you can start improving the agent. I feel like when you build the agent, that is like the first step, but then you have to spend time evaluating and doing all of these steps to improve the quality. Final recap. We talk about agents, we talk about evaluation and metrics, components. All of these slides I'm gonna share it at the end. And as well, we talk about how you can use Voxel 51 to run these agents, but in the same time, you have to integrate the evaluation to improve the performance of your model in production. Some resources, and I think I don't have enough time, but I think I can answer one question, Jimmy.